Testing 1, 2, 3. How's this gonna sound? Excuse me while I take a drink of this delicious frosty beverage. Oh yeah, that's good. It's like every single noise gets picked up in here. Crunching of my feet on the dirty floor mat, cars going by, even things I can't see, like there was a phantom motorcycle a couple of minutes ago. I was looking all around, I couldn't see any motorcycle anywhere, but boy, I could sure hear it. There goes a pickup truck driving behind me. I'm sitting in a parking lot, not a particularly busy parking lot, but no sound is too small that it won't be picked up by this thing, apparently. I don't know. Let me just pause right here and see how that sounds.
Listen up, meatbags. This is the ghost of Hunter S. Thompson, coming to you from across the void. You're listening to Raise the Thunderbeam with your host, Rimpy Rimpington. This cat's got some shit to tell you. Now listen up!
Well, that didn't sound that bad, actually. Kind of interesting. Maybe I can edit that bit out later, but let's get right to it. This is the very first episode of Raise the Thunderbeam, a new podcast to titillate your ears and delight your senses. I'm sitting in a Safeway parking lot while my daughters are shopping. It's the first real chance. I thought if I got out of the house, I would find some peace and quiet sitting here in the parking lot, but it's anything but quiet. Anyway, my name, if you must know, is Rimpy. Now, obviously that's not my real name. I'm doing this pseudonymously, I believe is how you pronounce it. Sometimes I know big words, but I've only seen them in print. And so sometimes I muff up the pronunciation. Anyway, I'm not using my real name because I may be critical of my employers at times in this podcast, and there is no such thing as freedom of speech in the workplace. It's still perfectly legal, although if the NSA is listening in on this, it's still perfectly legal for a person to say, oh, I hate the president. The president is bad, he's a jerk, I hate him. I wish he wasn't my president. And, you can still get away with that, even in these more paranoid times. Not so in your place of work. You cannot say, the boss is a jerk, I hate the boss, I wish he wasn't my boss, because pretty soon he won't be your boss. You'll be looking for a new boss. Anyway, and it's my company seems especially paranoid about this because they actually have it written somewhere in their policies and procedures that we shall not badmouth the company or the people who hired us, because I work for basically a contractor. I'm a public transportation operator. I drive a bus. So my company, a private firm, they contracted with the local transit authority to operate the buses for them. So I can't criticize either my company or the people they work for. So I have to be careful. And with that in mind, let me pause. So I'm back. I didn't need to tell you that, because you can't tell if I hit the pause button or not, although there might be strange little breaks in the background noise and whatnot. And maybe one of these days I'll figure out how to edit this stuff. This is very new to me. I'm just getting on the podcast bandwagon, as it were. Anyway, my name, as far as you need to know, is Rimpy, and this is Raise the Thunderbeam. Now, that name, perhaps I should go ahead and explain it a bit, actually comes from public transportation, but it predates my most recent employment in that industry. It was from my previous job. I was a vendor at the Home Depot, and I used to ride the bus from my hometown to I actually worked for a couple of Home Depots. Because I didn't work for Home Depot, I worked for another company that provided in-store merchandising services for Home Depot. So we served multiple Home Depots, and I had one in what I shall refer to as O-Town, that was my former hometown, and the one here in my current city of residence, College Town. I'll just call it College Town. Sorry for all this cloak and dagger stuff, but if I reveal too much about my actual location, my employers, if for some reason they ever got wind of this, they could, reasonably say, well, you're talking shit about us and our wonderful transit system, and, we'll see you later. Much as I don't like my job sometimes, it is my job, and I don't feel like looking for another one right now. Thank you. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah. Raise the Thunderbeam. So when I was working at the Home Depot, I can go ahead and say that, because I'm not really saying anything bad about the Home Depot. I like the Home Depot. I wish I was still working there, but I got downsized. Anyway, so when I was riding the bus to the Home Depot, one day there was a crazy lady on the bus. It happens a lot. As any of you who've ever ridden public transportation, are probably aware. Anyway, she wasn't super crazy, but she was kind of weird, saying a few weird things. And she was talking to another person who wasn't completely sane. Anyway, they were just kind of talking, and then it's sort of a lull in the conversation. She said in a very conversational tone, much as you or I might say, interesting weather we're having today, or something to that effect. She said, raise the Thunderbeam. And that was it. She didn't add to it. She didn't elaborate or anything. Just raise the Thunderbeam. And her companion seemed unfazed by it, but, cars. Oh, it's a taxi cab sitting near me. He's starting up. I'm sure you all heard that and are thrilled by this on-the-streets kind of guerrilla gonzo podcasting that's going on here. Anyway, the crazy lady, she said, raise the Thunderbeam. And I had no idea what that was supposed to mean. But you can trust me, I Googled the shit out of that phrase, trying to see if there was some precedent, some use of it before. And I couldn't really find anything. I did find that there is a brand of air raid siren, which aren't used much anymore, but they're still around, and they were sure popular back in the 60s when I was growing up and afraid of being, wiped out by the Russians and all that. Anyway, and towns would have like weekly or monthly air raid tests, and it was terrifying because it was like, what if the Russians knew when we have our tests and they send the missiles just at that moment, so we hear the sirens, but we don't do anything because we think it's the test, and then we all die. Anyway, so there was a brand of air raid siren called a Thunderbeam. God knows why. And also Mega Man, the little video game character. In one game, I believe, he had a weapon called the Thunderbeam. But I couldn't find any like use. There was also some of you children of the 80s may remember a show called The Thundercats, and they had like some kind of signal, I think, sort of like Batman. But I don't think they called it the Thunderbeam. Somebody suggested that as a possible answer, but I looked into it and I don't think it was, they used to say like send up the cat signal or send up the thunder signal or something like that. But no, raise the Thunderbeam. But that phrase just really stuck with me. And at the time I was just getting into blogging, and I had a blog, and it was called Rants in My Pants. I thought that was kind of clever. And just as an aside, that's where my pseudonym, Rimpy, comes from. Rants in My Pants. Rimp-E. Just so you know. Anyway, Rants in My Pants. And I thought that was pretty good. But when I heard Raise the Thunderbeam, I thought, that is a great name for a blog. And so I changed the name of the blog to Rants in My Pants. And I've been running that blog, I don't use it that much anymore. But anyway, when I got the idea to get into podcasting, instead of trying to think of some... I actually have another blog about... specifically about bus driving, but it's pretty moribund, and I don't use it as much as I thought it would. When I got back into public transportation, I thought this might be a great way to kind of vent and release some of the tensions of the job, to blog about these idiots and just the crap that goes on in public transportation. But I found that sitting down and typing at the end of a long day just felt like more work, so I kind of let that one slide. So I thought about calling this podcast what I called that blog, which is The Idiots Aboard. But, I really like Raise the Thunderbeam, and this podcast isn't going to be all about driving the bus, public transportation, although that is my current livelihood. I won't call it a career, although I have been in this job now for longer, and this particular employer for longer than any other single employer. And if you add the other times that I've done public transportation with other employers, it's kind of the largest chunk of, I've had a lot of jobs, some of them very different, and I'll tell you about them sometime. But for now, Raise the Thunderbeam. Of course, I'm going to talk about the bus, the crazy people on the bus, sometimes the crazy people who run the buses, but not just about that. It's more of a, personal, general purpose kind of podcast, I guess you would call it. So, I've introduced myself a bit. I'm Rimpy, and a car is going by. I'm sitting in a parking lot. Well, we've been over all that. I want to... Let's just get into the nuts and bolts, the meat of this podcast, as it were. Raise the Thunderbeam. I'll keep repeating the title until you've got it straight. Okay. I want to tell you a story about, and this just happened the other day, and it's the kind of thing that I wanted to do this podcast for, so I could share what I think are interesting stories, probably from, this one's from the bus, and probably a lot of them will be. And this just happened the other day, but it was one of the most interesting things that anyone has ever said to me in any capacity, at any job. But I picked up this kind of daffy woman in O-Town, and she was going to College Town, a difference of about 25 miles. This is a regional route called the Route 20. I can go ahead and say the actual numbers of the routes, because I'm sure other municipalities have, routes with similar numbers. So I feel fairly safe and just use it. It's a lot simpler on the blog. Idiots Aboard. I tried coming up with this complicated, substituting letters for the numbers to try to hide the identity of the transit system, and it was just a mess. So I'm not going to do that to you or to myself, because I'll never, and I'm probably going to slip up and accidentally say the real names of these towns. I hope I don't. I hope I catch it, so I can edit it out or whatever, or re-record. I don't know. We'll see. So from O-Town, see, it's easy. There are lots of towns that start with O and lots of towns that are college towns, so good luck, my company, in trying to track that down. Sorry if I sound paranoid, but I am. Anyway, so this lady gets on in O-Town, and the normal fare now, it just recently went up, is $2. And she started putting in money, and she stopped at about $1.20, and she looked at me and she said, "Is that enough?" And I said, "Well, it's $2. And she said, "Well, I don't have any more right now. I'm coming back later. Can I, make up the rest then?" And I said, "Sure," because I'm pretty easygoing that way. The company would prefer that we always get the full fare. I mean, sure, it's, providing public transportation is not cheap. It's subsidized by the government, so it costs less than it would if people had to pay the actual price of, hauling their butts around. But that's kind of the point of public transportation. It's cheap transportation for the public. Sorry, was that too P public for you? Sorry. I have a sock, a foam spit thing on here, but that sounded awfully puff spitty to me. But I digress. So anyway, she wanted to know if she could pay the rest later, and I said sure, because I could have been a hard ass and said nope, full fare, or or no ride. Sometimes people get on and they'll say ridiculous things like I gots no money, but I gots to get to, I'm not being stereotypical here. One guy actually was putting an S on the end of got. I've gots to get to such and such, And I said, well, you better start walking then, because, if they think about it. How well is that going to work if you walk into a store and say, I gots no money, but I gots to have this gallon of milk? They're going to take the gallon of milk away from you and escort you out of the store. But public transportation. So if somebody kind of comes at me with I would like a free ride, I'm like, no. But if they're a little short, and sometimes people, I think they know that if they've put some money in, we pretty much have to accept it, and so they might be a little devious that way. I don't think this lady was being devious. I think she was just a little daffy, and so anyway, there was nothing to be gained by being a hard ass about it. And like I said, once they've put some money in, we kind of have to accept it. We try not to advertise that fact, but I think some people realize it. So anyway, I said sure. So she went to College Town. A couple of loops later, she got back on, and she was wearing different clothing. I don't know why. But I had gone to use the restroom or whatever while the bus was loading. There was a short layover between runs, and when I came back, she was standing there. She said, "I wanted to make sure you knew that I was paying what I owed from before, because I'm wearing different clothing, and I thought you might not recognize me." I did, but anyway, I said thank you, I appreciate that. So she put in what she owed from the previous ride plus enough for the ride back, And I said something like, "I appreciate your honesty," something like that. And she said, "Well, I appreciate you helping me out earlier. Thanks to you, I was able to see somebody before they," and in that fraction of a second between the end of the word "they" and whatever was coming next, I my mind was racing, and I was thinking, is she going to say before they died? Please don't say that. Say before they left on a long vacation or left the country or anything but they died. And but I was not prepared for what came next. The next word was croaked. So yeah, whoever she was talking about had died, apparently. In between the last time I saw her. I mean, she may have been a little more daffy than she seemed. I mean, the whole story could be concocted or just in her imagination, or but I just the fact that she used the word croaked was really funny to me. I tried not to laugh, and I said, I'm sorry to hear that. She's like, no, it was a good thing. I got to say goodbye thanks to you. So, I hadn't really done anything except, not be a hard ass about affair. And, it seemed to mean a lot to this lady. So, I just, if she had said died, the story wouldn't be as funny to me as it is. And, but the fact that she said croaked, because nobody has ever really said croaked in that kind of capacity. And I used to be a funeral director, so I had to deal with a lot of people who had, quote, croaked, and their survivors, and none of their survivors ever used the word croaked. Passed away, that's a usual euphemism, or died, that's the usual word. It only has the one meaning, basically. But just croaked just amused the heck out of me. But to me, it was kind of a heartwarming story. So I'm glad I'm sorry whoever that was died, but I'm glad this lady got to say goodbye to them before they croaked. And it is Saturday. This is my lunch break. I am sitting in a company vehicle during my lunch break because it's private and cool. I'm at the office, but it's not necessarily very private in there, not conducive to podcasting. So I'm sitting in a company vehicle, and like the horrible American I am, I'm running the air conditioning because it's pretty warm out there. So that's what that roar is in the background. Excuse me. Very professional, clearing my throat into the microphone. So, I'm sitting in a company vehicle, and yes, Adam, I have reclined the seat. Excuse me. Oh, that's terrible. You other listeners, you probably won't get that reference. It's something. This is a good time for an acknowledgement. My good cyber friend, and now because I'm podcasting, fellow podcaster Adam Kochi of Podcasta Non Grata fame. You can look that up. It's the only podcast called Podcasta Non Grata, and you can find it on Spreaker or Podbean. I suggest you give a listen. He doesn't like praise for some reason. He's a very creative and funny fellow, and it's well worth your time to put him in your ears. Anyway, so a little acknowledgement. He sort of inspired me. His was actually the first podcast I really listened to in depth, and it sort of encouraged me to try it on my own. So thank you, Adam. Keep up the good work, and I hope if anybody else is listening, you'll check Adam's Podcasta Non Grata out as well. Anyway, on to other things. What do I want to talk about? I'm not sure. Sorry, this is all very free-form and unprofessional and amateurish, and, perhaps as time goes by, I'll, get kind of a system down. I didn't really want to script anything or kind of make program notes or whatever you call it, storyboard a podcast. I don't even know if that's a thing. That just seemed to kind of spoil the spontaneity. I have ideas, so it'd probably be a good idea if I were to jot them down before I picked up the microphone so I remember what the heck I wanted to talk about. Let me tell you a story. This doesn't have anything to do with the bus, because I was only about 5 years old. For some reason, this memory came to me. I had not thought of it in forever and ever. But for some reason it came back to me, and it kind of amused me.
I told a couple of people about it. They thought it was amusing. So I'm going to share it with you. When I was, like I said, I was about 5 years old, 5, 6 years old maybe. I don't really remember. Who remembers such things? I was living in a little town called San Luis Obispo. That's how we said it. That's how, purists would say, oh, it's Spanish, it should be San Luis Obispo. True, but we are Americans, and we said, and I'm sure they still do down in SLO, they say San Luis Obispo, and we laugh at people who they once actually the old I believe there's currently a TV program called Ironside about a detective in a wheelchair. It's a kind of a remake or reboot, whatever, of the old 60s into the 70s Ironside program. And one time they did an episode that was supposedly set in San Luis Obispo. They, of course, didn't really film in our town because most Hollywood productions, there's some rule about if they travel more than 50 miles from, their base in Hollywood, then they have to pay people more to work on the production or something like that. So they usually try to find some little town within that 50-mile radius of Hollywood, and they still exist, to kind of fill in as a little town anywhere. And so they, whatever this little town was that they actually filmed in, it was supposed to be San Luis Obispo, and we got a big kick out of that, because it looked nothing like San Luis Obispo. And in the episode, they kept saying San Luis Obispo, which is all very purist and correct, but not how we said it, so we knew they were full of shit. Yes, Hollywood is full of shit. Anyway, so in San Luis Obispo, now I don't know if this was a yearly kind of event, but I remember this particular year there was some sort of fair downtown. San Luis Obispo is one of the mission towns of California, and the Mission is right in the middle of downtown, and there's a nice place called the Mission Square, sort of a promenade, I guess you could say, a nice, open space kind of thing between the Mission and the creek. And anyway, they were having some kind of fair downtown, and I don't know what this fair was called. And I was quite young, so I didn't I don't remember very well, but there was this fair, and at this fair there was this booth where they were apparently either selling or raffling away a young cow, a baby cow, maybe a teenage cow, I'm not sure. And also at this fair you somehow could get these things. I'll just call them fair bucks. I don't know what they called them. I'm not sure how you got them, but maybe by winning prizes you got fair bucks. But so this cow was available for a certain amount of fair bucks, which was probably $1,500, let's say. I don't know what the equivalent in real money these fair bucks were, but let's say $1,500, $1,500 fair bucks for a cow. And I had some fair bucks on me, and I looked at them, and I was old enough to add up the whole numbers. And what I had in my hand was a one, it came to 15 something, maybe 150, maybe just 15. I was not old enough to really appreciate, how many zeros come after the whole numbers, or probably more to the point, that tricky decimal point, 15.00 is not the same as 1,500. And anyway, but I was looking at the fair bucks in my hand, and it seemed to be the same price on the sign for the cow. And I looked back at the fair bucks in my hand. And I looked at that sign, and I'm thinking, it looks as though I have enough to buy this cow. But that can't be right. Surely a cow cannot be so easily purchased. There must be some mistake. I thought, if cow ownership were so easy, wouldn't everybody have one? Anybody with 15 whatever fare bucks could have a cow? I thought, well, maybe, I don't know really what the value of a cow is. Maybe I'm the first kid to think of this. I'll be the first kid on my block to have a cow. I was like, I got to check this out. And if I can buy a cow, I'm buying a cow. And I didn't think about like what my parents would say if I came walking up to them. I don't even know why my parents weren't around. I guess I was old enough to be trusted to wander, back in the 60s in a small town. I guess things seemed safe, but it seems like my parents weren't nearby. I had a tendency to wander off anyway. But, so I don't know what they would have said if they'd seen me coming back leading a cow, I guess I thought it could just live in the backyard and it would take care of the grass, we wouldn't have to mow it anymore. I don't know. And free milk, whatever. Kids don't think these things through too well. So I kind of timidly walked up to the young lady behind the booth, and I held out my fare bucks to her, and she looked at them and she said something to the effect of, "I'm sorry, honey, this isn't enough." And I was like thinking to myself, oh, I knew it. I knew there, I knew there was something I didn't understand, but I was rather crushed that I, for a second there, cow ownership seemed possible, and then my hopes were dashed to the ground, and I was heartbroken. Anyway, I don't know why this story seems to mean so much to me right now, but it's like if I heard another person, telling that story about a child with cow dreams and hamburger budget, or probably a hot dog budget, I would find it amusing. So I hope you did too. Thank you very much. Well, sir, that's I am walking outside my place of employment. My lunch break's almost over. I thought I'd just sort of finish up here. I've got about 30 minutes of me babbling. I thought I should try to fill out half an hour. I don't know if there's some set or standard length to podcasts, but I figured, less than 30 is kind of cheap, but I don't want to bore you. I don't want to strain your good natures. So I've got about 30 minutes of me babbling on about absolute shit. And you can tell I'm walking around because of my labored breathing, because I'm a middle-aged wretch who's just waiting to die. And it's kind of warm out here, although it could be a lot worse, being mid-June in the Sacramento Valley. Oh, have I said too much? Does that reveal my location too precisely? I don't think so. Sacramento Valley's pretty fucking big. Anyway, that's where I live, Northern California. So, thank you for listening. I know I probably have at least one listener at the moment. Adam seemed curious to hear this, so I'm sure he'll do me at least the professional courtesy of giving a listen to this first episode. So thank you, Adam. And thank you anybody else is out there. So I want to hurry up and finish this up before my lunch hour ends, and then I got to sit down and figure out how to edit and add sound effects and maybe a little intro with some music, something like that. Anyway, so thank you again for listening, and I will see you next time on Raise the Thunderbeam. This is Rimpy Rimpington signing out.